Hello everyone, welcome to Unit 2, Part 2, Chapter 2 in your textbook, Research Methods. So what do sociologists do? So what we'll learn, we'll talk about the steps for conducting research, including the 7 steps for conducting research, and data collection methods and analysis. We're going to examine the differences in qualitative and quantitative data collection methods, and examine issues in data analysis, including validity and reliability. And you can follow along on pages 28 to 33 in Chapter 2. So why do this? What is the importance of sociological research? Well, it challenges overgeneralizations, exposes myths, and helps explain people's behavior. It influences social policies, and it sharpens critical thinking skills that affect daily living. So what are these magic 7 steps? So the first one is a research idea. So you have to come up with something that you're interested in. So I'm interested in students. I'm interested in what helps students learn. And I'm interested in what students do outside of just studying. So choose a topic you're interested in. You can choose a topic based on personal interest or because of a social problem. Then define the problem to be studied. So my interests are the relationship between students, grades, and extracurricular activities. The next thing I'm going to do is a literature review. I'm going to review previous scholarly research materials written about the topic to pinpoint the areas for study. It's a huge area, and by scholarly, that means Statistics Canada, literature that has been peer-reviewed, formulating a hypothesis. So you propose a relationship between variables and test it, and variables are traits that change over time. So my hypothesis, my thought, is that being involved in extracurricular activities positively affects students' grades. So that is what I'm going to test. So first of all, I'm going to have a dependent variable and an independent variable. So an independent variable is the variable that we think will change or influence the dependent variable and has effect on the dependent variable. So my independent variable is the change or influence that extracurricular activities will have on grades. My independent variable is the extracurricular activities, because that will affect the dependent variable, the variable that we're trying to predict and explain, outcome that is affected by the independent variable. So we're trying to explain student grades. So that's a dependent variable. So identify the independent and dependent variables in the hypothesis. So curfews reduce vandalism rates. The dependent variable that we're trying to predict and explain is vandalism rates. The independent variable, the variable that we think will change or influence the dependent variable, are the curfews. So the curfews are the independent variable that we think will change or influence the dependent variable, which is the vandalism rates. So the next one is research design. So now I have my hypothesis that being involved in extracurricular activities positively affects students' grades. That's my hypothesis. My research design, I can use qualitative, quantitative, or mixed methods to gather my data. So quantitative research focuses on numerical data, uses larger samples. It's good for looking at trends over a long time, longitudinal. Qualitative focuses on non-numerical data, uses smaller samples, individuals' understanding of their experiences, people's words. And mixed methods combines 2 types of research simultaneously. Most people use the mixed methods. Then we have data collection. So data collection methods include surveys, field research, experiments, content analysis, and secondary analysis of existing data. There's all kinds of these. So we can use unobtrusive methods, methods where a researcher does not intrude in the research context, includes non-participant observation and content analysis. So I can simply watch students' behavior, see who has extracurricular activities and what their grades are. Participant observation, gather information by participating in the social group being studied. So I could become a student at Niagara College and become involved in extracurricular activities, see if that affects my grades. Surveys. Typically, a researcher designs a questionnaire to use in their survey. A questionnaire has a set of questions with a choice of predetermined answers designed for the purpose of a survey. So I could make up a survey and hand it out to students. Interviews. Respondents are asked questions by the researcher through face-to-face encounter or over the phone. The questions can be structured or open-ended. So I can simply meet with a number of students and ask them about their experience. Secondary data collection. Use data gathered by another researcher or a form of the government, Statistics Canada, for example. So I can go looking for more research, compare papers, and find out what the answer is to my hypothesis. Experiments. A method to study a possible cause and effect relationship under well-controlled and regulated laboratory conditions. This is rarely used by sociologists because it's artificial. So we're not going to do an experiment. So population and sample. So a target population is a well-defined group of people with whom researchers want to get information. It's costly and time-consuming to study an entire target population. So for me to study all 12 or 13,000 students at Niagara College would be unattainable. So we look at a sample. So if N is population, and these are used in mathematics as well, N is the entire, capital N is the entire population, and a small n is the sample, I'm going to say I'm going to look at a certain segment of students at Niagara College to find out what their response is. So we have sampling procedures. So probability, systemic random samples. The process narrow down a population by taking a complete list of all members, choosing a random starting point, and selecting a sample of people at a set interval. For example, one every fifth person on a list. Probability, each member of the population has an equal chance of being selected for a sample due to the random selection, and this is the most accurate sampling procedure. Non-probability, narrow down a population by choosing a sample of people based on who is convenient. For example, the professor is studying exercise behavior among college students, so they hand out a survey to all the students in the intro sociology class because this is convenient. Less accuracy with non-probability sampling methods and not necessarily representative of cross-section of the population. Not everybody takes an intro to sociology course. The snowball example is narrow down the population by starting with one respondent and asking that person to recommend the next person to talk to. Uses a snowball as a metaphor for this process. So it keeps building and building and building. Questionnaires. I'm sure you've all filled out a questionnaire on a scale of 1 to 10. What do you think of? And then we have interviews. With the role of the researcher, in interviews, the researcher asks respondents questions either face-to-face or over the phone. And these questions can collect qualitative and quantitative data. And their interviewer records the answers. In a structured interview, each respondent is asked a standard set of questions in the same order. In unstructured interviews, the questions vary and they're more free-flowing. Secondary analysis. The role of the researcher analyzes and interprets data gathered by other researchers or the government. Meta-analysis, the big picture, interpret data gathered by other researchers. Official statistics, researchers may analyze data collected by Canadian Census or other data available through Statistics Canada. Researchers use historical materials, personnel documents, public records, and so forth to get their information. There are several issues in data collection. So generalization, assessing the relevance of finding beyond the sample. What is learned from the sample, can it be applied to a larger target population? For example, Professor ABC studied a random sample of 50 social science students at her college. Her findings can be generalized to which population? All students at any college, all students at her college, all social science students at her college, all social science students in Canada. All social science students at her college, because that's what she was studying. Ethics in research. Guidelines are provided to researchers through professional bodies and research ethics boards. Researchers must share their results openly and truthfully. Researchers must not falsify results, and researchers must not present others' work as their own. Do no harm. Researchers must also minimize any harm to participants. This includes protecting participants' identities and allowing them to withdraw from the research at any time. Step number 6. When researchers analyze data, they are concerned with issues such as reliability and validity. So, the accuracy of the measurement. Validity refers to accurately measuring. Is measure accurate? Does it measure what it's supposed to measure? For example, do we measure student success by GPA? Do we measure student success by their level of happiness based on what the student says in an interview? Consistency of measurement. Reliability refers to the extent to which a measure produces consistent responses. In other words, the degree to which an instrument measures the same way each time it is used under the same condition with the same subjects. So is it repeatable? If I do this again, am I going to get similar answers? If I take a different sample population, is it reliable? Will I get a similar answer? Number 7, dissemination of results. Researchers share knowledge with the public. So it's very important that the information that is gathered is shared, and it's shared appropriately. Once research is collected and the data is analyzed, social scientists must share the knowledge with the public. This can be done by publishing books or academic articles, presenting at public forums or conferences. Community-based research may be shared directly with the community under study. Spotting bad science. So spotting bad science is a trick, and the media often will spin things so that it works to the advantage of the media. You have to be very, very careful of fake news. So I'm going to leave this for you to read. You can pause the video here and read through these. There are several that I've highlighted that are of primary importance. So you may want to pause now and read through these. So key points of Unit 2, Part 2. Research approaches. Quantitative research refers to numerical data, quantitative, quantity. Qualitative refers to non-numerical data, so the talking, the words. Mixed methods is both. The research cycle includes 7 steps: the idea, the literature review, the hypothesis formation, the research design, data collection, data analysis, and the sharing of findings. Data collection includes methods like unobtrusive measures, secondary analysis, participant observation, surveys, and interviews. Data analysis. When we analyze data, we must ensure that our findings are both valid and reliable. And ethics. Every researcher must go through research ethics approval prior to starting a project in order to ensure the protection of their participants. So next, in Unit 2, Part 3, is ethical practices in research.